Universiteti Vitrina.
Types. Conference interpreting, community interpreting, court interpreting, and so on. Do you remember all the types? Or business interpreting? Whereas regarding to modes of interpreting, we said that we have
consecutive
and simultaneous and whispering. Don't forget whispering. As the name suggests, the whispering, that is the translator or interpreter, whispers at the ear of the speaker. Okay, do you remember the difference between consecutive and simultaneous interpreting?
Yes, in consecutive interpreting, something that helps you a lot is that you have more time, you can take some short notes.
Very good. The speaker pauses time by time, whereas in simultaneous interpreting, the interpreter has his or her earphones and has to interpret all the time without being allowed to have pauses. Okay, very good. Then we dealt with translatability and untranslatability. Do you remember? We dealt with some problems that translators or interpreters encounter when interpreting or translating, and we suggested some solutions. For example, whenever there are or you as an interpreter encounter words which belong to the cultural aspect. For example, kimono. How would you translate kimono? We provided, if you remember, some suggestion, right? We said that sometimes, for example, words can be translated word by word, or words can be remade, or we can leave the words as they are and provide a footnote, or we can, let's say, write between brackets the explanation in the, let's say, target language. Okay, you have the photocopies, Amira. You can take to your friends. I guess you weren't present at that class. Okay. Now today we will deal with another very fundamental element of interpretation, which is, let's say, an aspect that many translators and interpreters encounter, that is confidentiality. We will deal with some ethical issues regarding to interpreting, because there might be cases in which the interpreter faces, let's say, an embarrassing or, let's say, a very complex situation in which he or she does not know how to react. Thus, it is important to know that each translator or interpreter must or needs to know or to have or bear in mind or know the ethical considerations or issues that he or she must, let's say, respect. Okay? That is, while interpreting, some ethical responsibilities overlap with, let's say, being a responsible, respectful, and knowledgeable translator or interpreter. Thus, it is not only important to know how to, let's say, to have linguistic competencies or skills, but it is also important to have transferable skills. That is, to have the skills to convey the meaning from the original text into the target text without, let's say, changing it. Okay? I mean, without changing the essential, the meaning. You can change the words, or you can change the way you explain it, but what you cannot do is change the root or the meaning of the text. Now, there are several agencies or, let's say, institutions which provide such guidelines, ethical guidelines. One of them is NATI, which is the National, do you see the acronym for NATI? National Accreditation Authority for Translators and Interpreters, which, let's say, accredits the interpreters and translators, whereas the second one, the Institute of Interpreters and Translators, is the one which provides the concrete guidelines, ethical guidelines for interpreters. Okay, so the first one gives, let's say, the license to act as a translator or interpreter, and the second one gives, let's say, the ethical considerations. Now, each country might have such agencies, and each country might have different ethical consideration, or might provide different ethical considerations or guidelines. But more or less they are the same, that is, they aim at the same thing. And we will deal, or we will see later in the next slides, what do they deal with. Anyway, next class I will leave you more time to write down the slides, okay?
thinking to ask you that most of our professors tell us that we can take them from the web.
Yes, you have the lectures in the web.
Are they?
Yes,
so
they
we
will
don't
be.
spend time.
No, they
but
will
listen
be.
to you. It's better to listen and understand
Of
than
course,
take
they
them
will
home.
be. Every lecture is on the web.
Okay.
Okay. Now, we said that different countries may have different, but let's say, ethic principles. Some of them we can generally speak are that the translator or interpreter needs to, let's say, to respect the accuracy of the information. That is, whenever it makes an interpretation, he or she makes an interpretation or translation, he needs to convey the right meaning and to be accurate in the translation or interpretation process. He also needs to maintain, let's say, stable and professional relationship with his clients, be it the agency or the individual, because interpreters or translators may be employed by an agency, that is, they might work with interpreting or translating through an agency, or individually, let's say, they interpret an individual and so on. The idea is that they should treat the same and maintain business or respectful relationship, although the client might be only one client, okay, only an individual. Another one is that they should, let's say, try to avoid the use, or they should avoid using the information taken from the translation or interpretation for personal reasons. Okay. For example, we will see in some study cases. You have your uncle who has his will in his own original language, and he asks you as a licensed interpreter, to, let's say, translate the will. Now, what would you do? Would you translate that?
Yes, but you should consider that should be a secret.
Secret.
You can't tell to others. If you are sure that you can keep a secret, yes. If you are not sure, you shouldn't do it.
Okay, one of the, we will see later on, each one by one. One of the most fundamental principle is impartiality. That means you need to stay unbiased. Now, when translating the will of your uncle, the chances for being biased are great, right? So it would be better, I would suggest, not to translate it, because we said that you should be unbiased, you should try to be accurate, and try not to use the information in the translation process for your personal, let's say, gain and so on. Okay. Now, the Institute of Translators and Interpreters provide a code of ethics which includes 9 points, 9 main points. We will deal with them one by one. Let's start first with the professional conduct. Conduct is, do you know what conduct is? Yes, the performance, okay? So you need to make sure as interpreters that you always make, let's say, a responsible or professional, let's say, translation and interpretation, and you should respect or stay within the framework of your profession, okay? That is, for example, the case of the will, when we said that you should try at least to avoid, okay, you can try to help him make the translation, but not be the official translator or interpreter, okay? You should also try to provide a qualitative service. That is, you need to have, let's say, a professional growth and development in order to provide such service. Another guideline or principle is confidentiality. What did we say about the will?
So that should be confidential.
Yeah, it should be confidential, okay? And you should not, the interpreters should not disclose the information they might discover or they gain while interpreting. Another principle is competence. Competence is very important, and it is strongly connected to another principle that we'll mention later on, that is personal development, professional development and growth, okay? Why? Because interpreters, there is a tendency that interpreters tend to